today I thought it's about time we make some comfort food. We've had healthy, we've had Ayurvedic, and now it's time for some bready, cheesy goodness. I was absolutely obsessed with bread growing up. And let me tell you a funny story. So my mom would go shopping on a Friday and she would buy an incredible fresh loaf of bread. We'd cut it up, I'd have some on a Friday, and then she would know she would have to hide it from me. Because if she didn't, by Sunday, half the loaf would be gone. And where might it be? In my belly with a whole lot of butter and cheese. Those were such good days. And so in honor of my younger self, I thought we need to create this dish. And I absolutely was obsessed with Pizza Hut. That Pizza Hut deep dish pizza, thick, fluffy base, a whole lot of cheese on top. And so we are going to be making a jalapeno chili cheese bread with a deep dish. I'm feeling a little bit generous today, and so I thought, let me try and combine two recipes in one. So we're gonna use exactly the same ingredients, but we're gonna be making chili cheese dough balls too. So we're gonna be making our dough from scratch. And so for that, we need all-purpose flour, oil, salt, sugar, and yeast, and some warm water too. So we're gonna start off by making our dough. We first have to activate our yeast. That means we need to throw in our yeast into a bowl with the sugar, which helps activate it. And for this, you need 1 1/3 cup of water. So I usually do it by adding 1 cup of boiling water and 1/3 cup of cold water. That usually comes to about a warm temperature. If you're not sure, stick your finger in, and it should be just on the verge of uncomfortable. You shouldn't be able to keep your hand in there for too long, but you should be able to keep it in there for a couple of seconds, and that should be just right. So we're gonna leave this aside for about 5 to 10 minutes. You're gonna slowly see froth coming to the top of the surface. Now, if you don't see that, you may have to try this one more time. It may have been that your water was too cold or too hot, or possibly that your yeast may not be good. So try it out a couple of times. It takes a while to get used to it, but once you've got it, you've got it. So for this, obviously you can use ready-made pizza dough too. I just thought I'd give you an option of making it all from scratch. So while we're waiting, let's make our herby batter. For this, I have used my Miyoko's butter, the cultured vegan butter that I usually use when I'm baking. It's got the best flavor and the best taste that I've found in butters so far. And then we are going to be using some herbs like oregano, basil, all of them will be dried herbs. You can mix and match how you like. I sometimes use Italian seasoning too. And then we've got our trusted hing as my garlic replacement. I usually melt my butter, but it can also be room temperature like this, as long as you're able to mix it around with the rest of the ingredients. So you can see all that froth on the top, which means it's ready to put our oil in. So pour the oil in, but don't expect it to come together with the water. You can give it a good stir and then pour your flour in. Put it in bit by bit and then bring it together into one dough. So the dough will feel sticky at first. You haven't done it wrong. This is exactly how it's supposed to be. And now we have to knead it. Now this can be done in a stand mixer, but you know what? We're gonna do it the traditional way. We've got hands, so we're gonna use them. I'm gonna knead it on a flat surface. I prefer it because you get a lot more room to move it about. So ideally, you're gonna knead for about 5 to 10 minutes, for as long as your hands can handle. And slowly it should come together and it won't be as sticky either. If it feels a little too sticky, you can just sprinkle a tiny bit of flour over the top and keep going. Yeah, that's better. Just leave it that way. Much better. Okay, so now that you've had your fun, take the dough and put it into a bowl. You can either cover it with a damp cloth or cling film. I usually just use a damp cloth over it and keep it in a nice warm place for about 60 minutes. We are ready for the grand reveal. 3, 2, 1. You can see that your dough should have doubled in size, maybe like 1.5 times in size if you're lucky. And let's go in, let's come a little closer, come a little closer. Oh yeah, you can tell it's really airy in there. Look at all those air bubbles. And usually what you'll do is something called knocking it back, which means you take all the air back out before you shape it into your dough for your pizza. So now it's time for us to assemble. So first of all, I'm using my cast iron pan. I really love this for the pizza. It gives it such a great even brown color on the bottom and crispiness on the bottom. So I really love using this, and it also retains the heat. So once you bring it out of the oven, you don't have to worry about your pizza going cold. Pour on a little bit of olive oil onto the base of the dish, and then we'll put in our dough and press it out. And you're just gonna press it out with your hands. I don't roll the dough in this. It's really easy. You just keep pushing it out until it hits the edges. Perfect. So now let's just brush on some of the butter that we've got in here. I use about half of this on the bottom, and then I usually pour half of it on the top of the cheese. So typically I like to use 3 cheeses in this dish. I use the Miako's mozzarella, and the trick with this is sometimes it can be quite soft if you keep it in the fridge and then try to grate it. So if you put it into the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes before you're gonna use it, it'll grate really well. I like to use the Follow Your Heart dairy-free mozzarella shreds too. You don't need both. I just like having the difference of flavor in both of them. So I sprinkle a little bit of that on top. And lastly, oh my goodness, the Kite Hill ricotta. It's a soft cheese and it just adds so much creaminess to the dish. And I just really like the concept of having 3 cheeses on top anyway. You can use whatever cheeses that you do have at home, but if you are using the same ones as me, I usually use about half of the Miako's, about a handful or 2 of this, and probably about half of the Kite Hill. Trust me, you need it cheesy, otherwise it's just not worth it. One thing I will tell you, which is very, very, very important for your cheese to be super stretchy and melty, especially for vegan cheese, which usually takes a bit of effort to get it there. You have to have your oven preheated for at least an hour. At the highest temperature it goes, mine goes to 475 Fahrenheit, and I've had it on there for an hour. This really, really gets your cheese melted, it browns it perfectly, and your crust is super crispy. Okay, let's layer it up. We are putting on our jalapenos. Throw a couple of them on there. Depends on how spicy you like it, but I like mine pretty spicy. Next up, we're gonna throw a batch of the cheese on top. I usually do layers, so I'll do like a little bit of the jalapeno, a little bit of the cheese, a bit more jalapeno, a bit more cheese, a bit more jalapeno, a bit more cheese. All right, don't do this with buttery hands. Got it. Now with this, you can see I'm just lumping it around wherever I see fit. There is no method to this madness. Throw in as much cheese as you want, as many jalapenos as you want. If your butter is melted, you can pour it on. And lastly, grab a little bit more of your herbs and just sprinkle them on top. Time to put it in the oven. It should take about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes until you see it puff up, brown and crisp. Yay! Oh my goodness, it looks amazing. The cheese is bubbling, the crust is browning, the jalapenos are cooking, and it just looks great. Oh my gosh, it's done! Are you salivating yet? The crispy, the cheesy, is just phenomenal. The meltedness, everything. Now hopefully you have an equal amount of people in your family who like crust or middle. Now if you don't, there's going to be a problem. So now I'm going to show you how to make the jalapeno cheesy dough balls. We're going to use exactly the same dough, and I'm going to be using the Miako's mozzarella. Probably use about half of this, which I'm going to chuck into a bowl for the filling. So you can use the fresh jalapenos like I did in the chili cheese bread, but I actually really like using the pickled ones. I find they have far more flavor, and for this it's nice to have a bit of a pickly flavor too. So I've used about 1/4 cup of the jalapenos and half of the Miako's mozzarella. To be honest, there's not really a strict rule on ratio here. You can use whichever you like, but you're essentially gonna mix them all in. I use my hands a lot in cooking, so here we have it. You're gonna just mash up the jalapenos into the cheese. Take a teaspoon, you don't have to measure it, but you can if you want to. And we're gonna scoop out a teaspoon worth, and you're simply just gonna make a little ball out of it, put it onto a plate, and you're gonna put it in the freezer for about 5 to 10 minutes. That allows them to harden like this, which makes it much easier for the dough to wrap around, and you can form a really, really lovely, perfect round dough ball. Time for the dough balls. We have our pan. We are going to drizzle some oil. There's a whole lot of oil, butter, cheese, and bread in this. That's pretty much what we're doing today. I have separated my dough into 40-gram portions if you want to be exact, otherwise you can just rip a little bit off at a time. I also have my frozen cheese here, as we discussed earlier. You're gonna take your dough, split it apart, grab a frozen cheese ball, wrap it around, bada bing, bada boom. And there we have our cute little dough ball. And put it here. If you want them to kind of pull away from each other when you're eating them, almost like a little sharing plate, then you can snug them together like this, and then they'll all stick together and then you can tear them apart. I like to use fresh herbs for the dough balls, but you can also use the exact same mixture as we used for chili cheese bread. I think that's enough butter for now, but save a little bit because we can pour some on after it's cooked too. See you on the other side. So exciting. Just that sound is like, there's something amazing about sizzle sound, isn't there? Oh my goodness. This is literally like how I dreamt of dough balls looking. Everything feels like a dream now. The child inside me is so happy right now. Look at all of this bread. We've got chili cheese bread and we have our new addition, the dough balls. These look absolutely delightful. We've put a lot of butter on top to give it that glaze, and just, you know, if you're gonna have dough balls, they need to be buttery and they need to be cheesy. So before we dig in, let's do our prayer of gratitude. And you know what? You can say anything that you like in your mind. That is just a moment to take for yourself to feel gratitude for whatever it's taken for this meal to come to your table. Okay. So what should we start with? I kind of feel like I want to start with the hot one that I can pull away. Let's do this. Let's do these dough balls, shall we? Oh yeah, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Okay. Come, look inside. Can you see the cheesiness inside? And look, it's oozing out. Oh my goodness. This is absolutely divine. There's absolutely no such thing as too much butter or too much cheese. I'm gonna give that one an A star, star, star. Now let's try this one. Don't mind if I do. I am definitely more of a crust person, and this one looks like it's got a really good amount of everything on it. So I'm gonna go from the side. Oh wow. And my mother did teach me not to talk with my mouth full. I hope she didn't listen. This is delicious. The crust is so wonderful and crisp. You have the cheesiness on the top with the jalapenos, which are hot and spicy. And then the herbs just have such a lovely flavor. Honestly, you need this in your life. And I always think of this as a Friday night dish with your girlfriends or your boyfriend or your husband or even just yourself. And you have yourself a chili cheese bread all to yourself. Bit of a movie, bit of a chili cheese bread. Perfect night, to be honest, in my opinion. Now, I will be sharing this. I don't think I can eat this all by myself. So I think I'm gonna have to call some friends over to help me devour all of this. I hope you enjoy this recipe, and sending you all so much love and gratitude. And I guarantee you after this, you will be in a tremendous carb coma, but it will be absolutely worth it. If you liked this video or didn't even like it at all, make sure you leave a comment down below so we can get to know each other and build a conscious, loving community together.